Somewhere beneath the Egyptian desert, right now, as you breathe, something is waiting to be opened. A sealed corridor, a limestone door. Behind it, darkness that has not been touched by light in 3,500 years. The air in there has not moved. It has not been breathed. The last person who inhaled that air was laid in it on purpose and never left a single deep drone note. Then silence again. This is not fiction. This is not myth. In February of 2025, just months ago, archaeologist Dr. Piers Litherland crawled through exactly such a corridor. He broke into exactly such a sealed space, and when the darkness finally swallowed his torch, he found painted stars on a ceiling that had last been seen in 1479 BC. He later told the BBC that when he came out of that tunnel and found his wife waiting in the sunlight, the only thing he could do was burst into tears. Let it breathe. We need to talk about what's down there. We need to talk about who built it, what they believed, what they did, what was done to them. We need to talk about the screaming mummies, the assassinated god, the boy king who may have been murdered by someone he trusted, the queen who simply vanished. We need to talk about the people who opened these tombs and what happened to them after, because the dead of ancient Egypt are not quiet. They have never been quiet. Before we descend into the darkness, we have to understand what we are descending into. Not a tomb, not simply a machine. The pharaoh's burial complex was an engineered mechanism designed to perform one specific function: to transform a dead human body into a living god, to process death into divinity, to take the rotting meat of a king and guarantee it eternal life. The process took 70 days. 70 days of ritual. 70 days of cutting and treating and chanting and rapping. 70 days during which priests became surgeons, became magicians, became undertakers, all in service of a single belief. The body must not rot. The soul will not survive without it. Day 1, the priests came for the organs. An incision was made in the left side of the torso. The intestines were removed. The stomach, the liver, the lungs, each one was placed in a separate, sacred vessel. A canopic jar topped with the face of one of the 4 sons of the god Horus to watch over the organs forever. Only the heart was left untouched, because the heart was the seat of consciousness, the seat of identity, and in the afterlife it would be weighed on a golden scale against a feather, the feather of truth. If the heart was heavier than the feather, if it carried the weight of sin, of cruelty, of the dark acts done in life, a monster called Ammit was waiting beside the scale. Part lion, part hippo, part crocodile, and it would devour the heart whole. Not death, something worse. Annihilation. No soul. No afterlife. Nothing. Erased from existence entirely. This is what the pharaohs feared. This is what the entire civilization was organized to prevent. And then, the brain. The brain was considered useless, unimportant. The embalmers used a long metal hook inserted through the nostril to break through the skull and liquefy the brain matter, and then they drained it out through the nose. The most powerful people who ever lived, kings who commanded armies, who owned entire rivers, who built mountains out of stone, reduced to a procedure. A hook through the nose, a slow drain. 70 days, salt-dried, oiled with cedar and juniper resin, wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen, each wrapping accompanied by a spoken spell, each layer a prayer, each bandage a lock on a door between this world and whatever comes next. Now, here is what archaeology has confirmed in peer-reviewed science as recently as 2024. The chemical formulas the ancient Egyptians used for embalming, frankincense, juniper resin, castor oil, bitumen, were so effective that DNA extracted from 3,500-year-old royal mummies is still readable, still sequenceable. In 2025, genetic laboratories are still running tests on the cells of dead pharaohs. Their biology outlasted their civilization by 3 millennia. The machine worked. The only question is what was still inside. Imagine being a citizen of ancient Egypt in a world where the pharaoh is literally, theologically, physically a living god, and you wake up one morning to hear the gods have been canceled. All of them. Ra, Osiris, Isis, Anubis, the entire pantheon, the same gods your grandparents prayed to, and their grandparents going back to the very beginning of time. Gone. Forbidden. The temples closed. The priests dismissed. The sacred images defaced by government order. The man responsible was Pharaoh Amenhotep IV. He changed his name, called himself Akhenaten, which means servant of the Aten, the Aten being the sun disk, a deity with no human face, no mythology, no stories, just light radiating down from the sky, and one priest below it, him. He moved the entire capital of Egypt to a city he built from nothing in the desert, a city where no city had ever stood before. He called it Akhetaten. He designed it himself. He filled it with temples that had no roofs, so the Aten's light could always pour directly onto the altars. He ruled for 17 years, and everything he did in absolute certainty that he alone was correct, that he alone had seen the divine truth, that every temple that had come before, every prayer, every ritual, every priest had been wrong. He was either the greatest religious visionary in history or a man of catastrophic, civilization-fracturing arrogance. And then, around 1336 BCE, he stopped appearing in the historical record. No death announcement, no funeral inscription, no record of the successor being named by his hand. He simply ceases to exist in the documents. Some Egyptologists believe he was deposed. Some believe he was killed by the priests whose power and livelihood he had destroyed. A powerful, organized, furious class of men with every reason to want him gone. His body has never been definitively confirmed. His city, Akhenaten, was abandoned within years of his death, left to the desert. The Egyptians who came after him did not just leave it, they dismantled it. Stone by stone, they used his buildings as quarry material. They carved his name from every surface they could find. They tried to erase a man from time itself, and his queen Nefertiti, whose painted limestone bust sits in Berlin's Neues Museum and is arguably the most recognized female face from the ancient world, also vanishes from the record around the same time. No tomb has ever been found. No confirmed mummy. Some scholars believe she became Pharaoh herself after Akhenaten's death, ruling under a different name. Others believe she was killed alongside him. Others that she retreated into the shadows of the palace and simply waited. In December 2024, the travel history magazine The Travel listed Nefertiti's missing tomb as one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in archaeology. And Egypt's legendary archaeologist Zahi Hawass stated in a recent documentary that he believes her tomb is close to discovery. Close, but not yet found. There is a woman who was once the most powerful queen in the world, who stood beside a god-king in a roofless temple in a city in the desert, who wore a blue crown that no woman before or after her wore. And we do not know where she is. We do not know how she died. We do not know if she was mourned. She is somewhere, under the sand, under the stone, in the dark. November 4th, 1922. A workman on Howard Carter's dig team in the Valley of the Kings strikes something with his foot in the dirt. Not rock. Stone. Cut stone. A step. Carter arrives. He stares at it. He has been digging in this valley for years. He sends his team home. He covers the step. He sends a telegram to his patron in England. At last, have made wonderful discovery in valley. A magnificent tomb with seals intact. 22 days later, November 26th, 1922. Carter makes a small hole in the upper left corner of a sealed door. He puts a candle to the gap. He peers in. The hot air from inside. 3,300-year-old trapped air pushes against his face like a breath. Carnarvon is behind him. He whispers, "Can you see anything?" Carter's answer became the most famous sentence in the history of archaeology. Yes, wonderful things. Inside was the mostly intact tomb of Tutankhamun, a boy king, a pharaoh who died at approximately 18 or 19 years old, whose reign was brief and historically minor, who is now, because of what Carter found, the most famous pharaoh who ever lived. The discovery ignited the world. Newspapers ran it on every front page. Fashions changed overnight. A style called Tutmania swept through Britain and America. The Art Deco movement carries Egyptian geometry in its bones to this day. The world wanted to believe in ancient Egypt. It wanted the gold and the mystery and the wonder. It got something else as well. A journalist named Marie Corelli had written a piece 2 weeks before Carnarvon died, claiming the most dire punishment would find anyone who entered the pharaoh's tomb. Her words were essentially ignored. They were printed in a magazine. They were the sort of dramatic claim people write and forget. Then Lord Carnarvon died, April 5th, 1923. A mosquito bite on his cheek became infected. He nicked it shaving. The infection entered his blood. He was dead within days, still delirious with fever at the end, reportedly crying out in German, a language he did not speak in waking life. He died precisely 5 months after the tomb was opened. At the moment of his death, an unexplained electrical surge plunged Cairo into darkness. Some reports say it was only his house. Some say the entire city. The electrical records from 1923 Cairo are insufficient to confirm either way. At his family estate in England, a dog named Susie let out a single long howl and died. His family reported this independently at the same hour. And here is the detail that has troubled researchers for a century. X-ray scans of Tutankhamun's mummy, taken later, revealed a small wound on the pharaoh's left cheek. Mon voice drops to near nothing, in the same location as the mosquito bite that killed Lord Carnarvon. The deaths continued. George J. Gould, a wealthy American railway executive, visited the tomb and returned to France. He developed a violent fever he had not had before the visit. He died within weeks. Sir Archibald Douglas Wright, the radiologist who x-rayed the pharaoh's mummy, died on January 15, 1924. Complications of surgery, his skin cancer had been spreading. He was 52. Arthur Cruttendon Mace, a senior member of Carter's excavation team, began deteriorating mysteriously in 1924. He left Egypt and never returned. By April 1928, he was dead. In his final writings, he reported believing he was being slowly poisoned. Richard Bethel, Carter's personal secretary, one of the first men inside the tomb, was found dead in his bed at an exclusive London gentlemen's club in 1929. Initial reports said heart attack. Later investigation could not rule out smothering. His death was never conclusively explained. Bethel's father, an elderly lord, was so overcome in the weeks after his son's mysterious death that he threw himself from the window of his 7th-floor London apartment. Hugh Evelyn White, a British scholar who visited the tomb site, died by suicide in 1924. He left a note, allegedly written in his own blood. It read, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear. Now, the honest accounting." A serious academic study examined 58 people who were present at the opening of the tomb. Only 8 died within the following 12 years. Howard Carter, the man most intimately connected with the tomb, who spent the most time inside it, lived until 1939, dying at 64. Lord Carnarvon's own daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, who was among the first people to set foot inside the tomb, survived for another 57 years. She died in 1980. Scientists have proposed a biological explanation. Toxic spores of a fungus called Aspergillus flavus, preserved for 3 millennia in the sealed tomb's atmosphere, may have been inhaled by the first people to enter, triggering respiratory illness in those already vulnerable. A logical explanation a medical one, and yet Howard Carter had, during the excavation, given a paperweight to his friend Sir Bruce Ingham as a gift, a token from the dig. It was a mummified hand, wearing a bracelet. The bracelet was inscribed with a phrase that translated to, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." Within months of receiving this gift, Ingham's house burned to the ground. When he rebuilt it, the new house was struck by a flood. Ingham himself was not harmed. He lived a long life. He simply lost everything he built. Twice, Howard Carter dismissed all of it. He called curse talk Tommy rot. He was a scientist and a rationalist, and a man who had given his life to empirical study. He spent the rest of his life working alone. He never married. He had no children. His health deteriorated in ways his doctors struggled to classify. He died quietly, and inside Tutankhamun's tomb, in the treasury room, Carter's team had found a small, plain wooden box, easy to overlook, unremarkable compared to the gold and lapis lazuli surrounding it. Inside the box were two small coffins, covered in black resin, marked only with the words, "The Osiris," referring to the god of the dead. Inside the coffins were two infant mummies, believed to be Tutankhamun's daughters, who may never have taken a single breath outside the womb. A teenage boy, a dead king, surrounded by his gold and his gods, and his dead children in the dark. The year is 1155 BCE. Pharaoh Ramses III, the last great warrior king of ancient Egypt, is spending the night in his palace harem at Medinet Habu in Thebes. It is a festival night, the beautiful festival of the valley. The streets are loud, there is music, there are crowds, the noise is deliberate cover. Someone, or several someones, enters the room where the god king of Egypt sleeps. What happened next was hidden from the world for over 3,000 years. When Ramses III's mummy was discovered in the 19th century and unwrapped, forensic examiners found no obvious cause of death. His body appeared intact. His death was presumed natural. A great king, aged, passing peacefully. The case was then, in 2012, scientists placed the mummy of Ramses III into a modern CT scanner, and the machine told the truth that 3,000 years of burial wrappings had hidden. Beneath the thick collar of linen at his throat, packed with resin, layered with deliberate care, was a wound 7 centimeters wide, extending almost to the spine. The trachea had been severed, the esophagus, every major artery in the neck. The royal embalmers had done what they were ordered to do. They had hidden the evidence. They had filled the wound with resin. They had covered it with a ceremonial collar. They had wrapped the body as if the death had been peaceful. They had, in effect, performed a cover-up on a god. Ramses III, Pharaoh of Egypt, warrior who had fought off 3 attempted invasions, had his throat cut. Who did it? We know, because they left a record. The Judicial Papyrus of Turin, A court document that dates to this exact period describes the trial of over 40 conspirators, a plot organized by one of Ramesses III's wives, Queen Tiye, who wanted her son Pentawere on the throne instead of the designated heir. The conspiracy reached from the royal harem into the treasury, the military, the judiciary, and the royal household. Tiye had recruited butlers, scribes, army commanders, court magicians, and harem officials. She had organized, planned, and waited. And on festival night, while the crowds covered the noise, someone went into that room. Then, quietly, the CT scan also revealed a severed toe, hacked off with a different weapon, suggesting multiple attackers surrounding the king, striking simultaneously. 28 people were executed after the trial. Some had their noses and ears cut off. The punishments recorded in the papyrus use language so clinical and bureaucratic that it is somehow more disturbing than the violence it describes. 4 judges who had fraternized with the accused had their ears removed, their noses. Prince Pentawere, Tiye's son, the man the conspiracy was designed to crown, was allowed to take his own life. And here is where the horror has a face. Found in the same burial cache as the murdered Ramesses III, stashed together in death as they had been separated in life, was a mummy archaeologists cataloged as unknown man. His coffin bore no name, no identifying marks. He had been wrapped in sheepskin, material the ancient Egyptians considered ritually impure. His body had not been properly embalmed, and his face was locked in a scream, mouth wide open, features contorted in an expression of absolute terror or absolute agony that had been preserved for over 3,000 years. DNA testing confirmed he and Ramesses III shared the same Y chromosome, a father-son relationship. Almost certainly, Pentawere, the prince who killed his father and died screaming into eternity. The forensic team also found something else. Compressed skin folds around his neck. The papyrus says he was allowed to take his own life. The body says someone may have helped. The murdered father, the screaming son, buried together in the dark for 3,000 years, found in 1881, still on display in the Cairo Museum today. You can go see them. They are open to the public. There is another screaming mummy, and her story is different. She was found in 1935 during excavations near Luxor, in a tomb belonging to Senmut, the master architect who served under Queen Hatshepsut. She was found in a wooden coffin, wearing a black wig made from palm fibers, 2 scarab rings made of jasper on her fingers. Her face was locked in a silent scream, mouth open, features stretched in what looked like agony. She was labeled CIT-8 and stored away. For decades, she sat in storage at the Qasra Al-Aini School of Medicine in Cairo, where the royal mummies had been studied, and then moved to the Cairo Egyptian Museum at the request of the Ministry of Antiquities. In 2024, a team of researchers in Cairo conducted CT scans of her remains. published their findings in the journal Frontiers in Medicine in June of that year. The scans revealed she was 48 years old when she died. Her internal organs had not been removed, unusual for New Kingdom mummification. There was no embalming incision. The brain, heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys were all still present. She was embalmed with costly imported materials: juniper resin, frankincense, expensive, carefully applied. She was not a poorly mummified body. She was a meticulously preserved woman whose mouth had simply not been closed. Lead researcher Sahar Salim of Cairo University concluded, the evidence suggests she died in a position of acute physical distress. The expression is consistent with cadaveric spasm, a full-body muscle lock that can freeze the body in whatever position it held at the moment of death. She died screaming. We do not know her name. We do not know why she screamed. We do not know why she was buried in a tomb beneath the architect of a female pharaoh, wrapped in the finest imported embalming resins, adorned with jasper, wearing a carefully constructed wig. We know only what the scanner showed us. A woman 3,500 years ago died in terror or in agony or in something that made her body freeze with her mouth open, and she has been screaming silently ever since. She is in a museum right now as you listen to this in Cairo. Her face has not changed. Here is the most frightening thing about ancient Egypt. It isn't over. In February 2025, Dr. Piers Litherland and his British Egyptian team announced the discovery of the lost tomb of Pharaoh Thutmose II, the last missing burial of the entire 18th dynasty. The first pharaonic tomb discovered since Tutankhamun's in 1922. 100 years between discoveries, and both of them in the same valley, both of them telling the same story. You think you know what's in the dark. You do not. The tomb had been first located in October 2022, but required nearly 3 years of excavation before it could be confirmed. The debris inside had been compressed by ancient floodwater until it was, as the archaeological reports describe, concrete-like inconsistency. When the team broke through, they found a ceiling painted blue with golden stars, stars that had not been seen since 1479 BCE, and almost nothing else. The flood that sealed the tomb had come within years of the burial. Ancient priests had removed the pharaoh's body and his burial goods, taken them somewhere else. A second tomb, which the team believes may still exist, still sealed, possibly undisturbed, somewhere in the rubble nearby. The mummy identified as Thutmose II since 1881 is almost certainly not him. The bones are too old. The body too developed for a king who likely died as a teenager. So, the real Thutmose II is somewhere beneath the Egyptian desert, right now, possibly in an undisturbed tomb, possibly still surrounded by the burial goods placed there 3,500 years ago. Still waiting, still sealed. In the same year, 2025, another team discovered a royal tomb at Abydos, 7 meters underground, near a site the ancient Egyptians called Anubis Mountain, the mountain of the death god. Inside, a large tomb, stone, sealed, extensively robbed in ancient times. The king's name has not survived. A pharaoh without a name, a god stripped of identity. By the ancient Egyptian theology, this means he cannot speak in the afterlife, cannot be recognized, cannot enter eternity. He is simply there, in the dark, under the mountain of death. And in December 2024, archaeologists found something stranger still. A 2,200-year-old vase depicting the dwarf god Bes. Inside the vase, a blood-red liquid, analyzed by scientists and found to contain hallucinogenic compounds, plant-based drugs mixed into what appeared to be an alcoholic beverage, evidence of a ritual. One in which the participants drank something that would dissolve the boundary between this world and the next. That would make the gods visible. That would make the dead present. The Egyptians did not just believe in the afterlife. They opened a door to it. They drank the key. You have to understand what all of this means together. The pharaohs were not relics. They were not static carvings on dead walls. They were living terror. Men who believed themselves divine, who commanded millions, who ordered the construction of permanent monuments to their own indestructibility, who swallowed drugs to see through the veil of death, who were murdered by their own wives and children, who were buried with their dead daughters, who screamed in their final moments and had those screams preserved in resin and linen for 3,000 years. And every year, another door opens. Another sealed corridor is crawled through. Another ceiling painted blue with yellow stars is illuminated for the first time in 35 centuries. And we don't know what we'll find behind the next door. We don't know whose name is on the next jar, whose screaming face is behind the next unsealed wrapping, whose tomb is waiting, complete and undisturbed, beneath the next hill of rubble in the Valley of the Kings. The ancient Egyptians believed that if your name was spoken, your soul lived. Your Ren, they called it. The name as the essence of identity. As long as someone says your name, you exist. Tutankhamun, Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Ramesses, Tutmosis. You just said their names. Every one of them. By the theology of ancient Egypt, the one they organized their entire civilization around. The one that built the pyramids and filled the tombs and spiced the bodies and painted the stars on the ceilings and trolled the hook through the nose to drain the brain and placed the gold tongue in the mouth so the dead could speak. By that theology, they are alive right now because of you. Sleep well.